Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Garden Wall Perspectives. And today, we're going to be discussing episodes 3 and 4 of Over the Garden Wall, Schooltown Follies, and Songs of the Dark Lantern. Now, when we last left our heroes, they had met a bluebird by the name of Beatrice, who, after they helped her get out of a bramble of vines, who offered to help them get home by finding a woman named Adelaide of the Glade. And so, after having an encounter with a bunch of skeletons in costumes, they went on their way to find Adelaide so that she'd be able to send Wirt and Greg home. And that's where this episode picks up, with the trio, or quartet if you count the frog, now just walking down a path and trying to reach Adelaide. However, as they're going along, Greg is being a kid and just trying to have a good time, even singing a song, singing about how they're off to see Adelaide, it's the Adelaide Parade, blah blah blah. Pretty much he's just trying to keep everyone in high spirits, but Beatrice is just kind of getting annoyed by him, even constantly telling him, listen, can you just shut your trap? And as a result, Greg does keep getting quiet, but to kind of list an example of what Greg should be, Beatrice says that maybe Greg should be like his older brother Wirt, who she says is a doormat, just doing everything that he's told. And Wirt obviously takes offense to this, though there is some standard to it as he keeps stopping to tie his shoes, and Beatrice says, hey, keep going. It's obviously Wirt just gets offended by it, but Beatrice keeps going on and says, look, I understand you're trying to be happy and nice, but the world's a scary, dark place and not as sweet as candy, so you just gotta accept it. As such, Greg says, okay, I accept it, and by which he means he accepts that he's gotta work to make the world a better place, and then he just runs off. As such, Wirt and Beatrice end up following after him, and in their travels, they end up finding a schoolhouse in the middle of the woods. Greg gets there first and, well, reacts the way any kid would react to school. Yeah. As such, he avoids it, but Wirt and Beatrice end up go towards the schoolhouse itself. And while it looks like a kind of old-timey schoolhouse with a teacher, a chalkboard, and people sitting at desks, the students are animals. Yeah, they're all dressed up in little outfits, but they're still animals. They don't even talk. Got higher intelligence than normal animals because they can react like normal people, but yeah, they're just animals. As such, the teacher sees Wirt and Beatrice and says that they're late for school, and they have to take their seats, and while Beatrice tries to shush Wirt off, Wirt, being a stubborn jackass and trying to stick it to Beatrice, says, well, I'm a pushover, so I'm just going to do what she says, and just takes a seat, although he ends up getting put in the dunce box because he keeps talking to Beatrice, which, again, he does because he's supposed to be a doormat and doing what the teacher says. It's actually kind of funny and nice seeing Wirt being so spiteful to Beatrice. In the meantime, Greg is outside and meets some other animals in shirts, and he's actually just chatting with them, goofing off, playing what he thinks is a game called Two Old Cats, which is literally about finding two old cats, while in the school, the teacher is just lamenting her lot in life, how the schoolhouse is being continuously threatened by her father to be closed down, how her love-to-be has run off to God knows where, and how there's a wild gorilla on the loose, etc. As such, she ends up saying this long song about her woes, which actually is in the case of the ABCs. But in the meantime, as Greg is playing with the animals, they happen to run into said wild gorilla and get into kind of an amusing chase, which ultimately ends with them climbing on top of the schoolhouse and ringing the bell, which ends up stopping the teacher's song as she thinks, oh, it's dinner time. As such, she ushers all the students into the dining hall, which is kind of weird there's a dining hall because the school looked like an average-sized one-room schoolhouse, but whatever. Let's say magic. So Greg ends up, as such, Wirt and the rest of the animals go into the dining hall with Greg and the animals from outside joining them because they run to the school to avoid the gorilla. But ultimately, the dining hall just kind of seems a bit dead, kind of deadish, as the only meal that anyone ever has is bland potatoes. As such, Greg decides to liven things up a little, and after encouraging the teacher to play a different tune on a piano, because she's playing melancholy music in the corner, he grabs a jug of molasses that was on said piano, and sings a song about molasses on potatoes, and how it's sweet, nice, and a good treat to have, and fills your rumbly stomachs. which it's a nice song, pretty upbeat, ultimate, nothing amazing, but still pretty nice and cheery. Although the song does get interrupted when the teacher's aforementioned father comes in and asks what the hell they're doing. When the teacher says, "Oh, we're just having some fun," he ends up getting angry and confiscates various instruments that the animals are using in the song and tells everyone that they just need to go to bed. As such, they do that, and Beatrice finally admits to Wirt that she says, "Fine, you're not a pushover, you're a stubborn jerk," which ultimately just makes Wirt double down and say, "Maybe I'll never leave." Greg decides, actually, you know what? No, Greg's right. We shouldn't stand down. We need to go. We need to go and take and fix everything. As such, Greg, Wirt, and Beatrice, again, and plus the frog, I suppose, end up breaking out of the schoolhouse. They create like a rope of bed sheets that they use to climb out a window, and so they go off to look for the father. And sure enough, they do find him in the woods, but they happen across him just kind of sitting in the middle of a grove as he's weeping. Yeah, it turns out that the reason he's weeping is because he doesn't want the school to fail. It turns out that when he set up the schoolhouse, he did it for the express purpose of teaching animals to count and wear clothes for whatever reason. And unfortunately, because of that purpose, the school has just been draining money from him. He's had to sell his home, his various properties. And with his daughter's boyfriend off doing God knows what, there's no suitable income, so he's just kind of resorted to selling whatever he can to stay afloat, which includes the instruments, which he plans to sell like post haste. Although at first he uses them plus his overly large coat to make an aforementioned tent. Sorry about the shaking. Shindy was just over there and she was moving around the bed. But the point is, the instant he falls asleep, the group ends up stealing the instruments, and when he wakes up, he's wondering what's going to do, but as he wanders into a clearing, it turns out the reason they stole the instruments? They're holding they gave them back to the animals and are holding a benefit concert, and people are donating money to go to the schoolhouse, so things seem to be working out, and all well that ends well, right? Well, there's still the matter of that gorilla, which ends up storming the place, and in the chaos that it brings, Wirt tries to go and do something, and, well, remember how I said he kept trying to tie his shoelaces, but Beatrice stopped him? Well, he ends up tripping on his shoelaces and knocking into the gorilla, which somehow knocks its head off. And it turns out it ain't a gorilla. It's in fact the teacher's deadbeat boyfriend. Yeah, it turns out he went off to get a job at the circus in order to earn ends meet, but he got a job as a gorilla, and he wound up getting stuck in the costume. And ultimately, because no one was too scared of him to go near, he's just been kind of running around ever since. As such, now that the mask is off and people can see it, it turns out he's back, and another reason he wanted to go off and get money was because he wanted to afford a wedding ring to give to the teacher. And so, all's well that ends well, with everyone cheering, happy, everything's nice and sweet. Greg ends up going back, sings some molasses and potatoes, and the episode ends with Wirt and Beatrice that's just kind of on the sidelines thinking, let's let Greg have this before we get going again. So, yeah, all's well that ends well, I guess. But that's ultimately just one episode. What about the other one? Well, Songs of the Dark Lantern does pick up with the boys back on their journey, and after the schoolhouse, at some point, they manage to hitch a ride with a guy on his hay cart, or at the very least, they're stowaways in his hay cart, and he's just kind of riding crazy through the night, through a storm, yelling about how the beast is upon him. As such, the quartet is just kind of obviously not knowing where they're going because they're in the back of a hay cart, and the guy here is obviously in a hurry and most likely scared. But at the same time, they kind of do. At the same time, he's probably a quick way to go through, though Beatrice thinks they're a bit off the path. However, ultimately, their discussion comes to a halt as when the guy makes a sharp turn, his haystack gets thrown off of the cart along with our group. And in this case, and where they end up is in front of a tavern. Well, Wirt is a bit hesitant to go inside it. At the same time, Greg is hungry and they're lost and need directions to Adelaide. As such, the group ends up going inside the tavern, and it's full of a bunch of strange characters, weirdos, and just basically all these different people from various walks of life. And the thing is about each of them, they all have titles to them. All of them have some basic descriptor that describes who they are as a person. Like, there's someone there who's the tailor. There is someone there who is the highwayman. They got a toddler. They got a master and apprentice. They even have the tavern keeper. Although when the tavern keeper sees Beatrice, she shoots her out because she says that she brings bad luck. As such, the tavern keeper, upon seeing Wirt and Greg, which is a little funny thing, after every scene we see with Greg is him going up to the bar and getting food, and then getting food, but then the next time you see him, he's bringing more food back, and by the end of the episode, he's got plates upon plates stacked up on the table. But point is, she asks Wirt and Greg who they are, and while Wirt introduces them by their titles, which ultimately reveals that they're not actually stepbrothers like I thought they were, they're actually half-brothers, so that's egg on my face, sorry about that. Well, ultimately, even after the introduction, the tavern keeper's like, no, who are you? Upon which point she points out all the titles about everyone in the tavern, and pretty much it's just everybody's got a basic descriptor. So what are they? What's their description? What's their title? And while Wirt tries to just say it's nothing, even getting the title of a simple-minded fool, eventually when he does begin asking directions for Adelaide, they begin assigning him titles like, "Oh, you're the lover trying to find a lady," and he just tries denying it. And when he actually does sing about how he wants to get to Adelaide, and that the real reason he's seeking her out is because he and his brother are lost, they think, "Oh, you're the pilgrim, traveling, making your own lot in life," and all that BS and so forth. As such, it leads to some kind of funny antics, and something I do like about the episode is there is some nice songs in this, and this is every time the people have, because the people are so joyous about the titles that they actually have the songs about them. Like the Highwayman, who sings about what he does for a living, how he makes his living grifting and stealing and so forth, and when they learn that think that Wirt is the lover searching out his lost lady love, they sing about giving him advice and so forth. But basically they're just cheering him on and want to hear more about his adventures with Wirt and Greg just telling about the various things they came across, how they tackled a gorilla, how they met a woodsman who gave them directions, and how they told them to avoid the beast. Although the instant that the people of the tavern hear of the beast, everything goes quiet. As such, Wirt asks, "Wait, how do you know the beast?" And they begin singing about the beast and its story. How it stalks the night looking for those who have lost their way. How if you lose your will, it will catch you. And that when it catches you, it'll turn you into an edelwood tree. And using the edelwood tree and using the bark from your wood, you'll be burned down to oil to light its lantern. At which point Wirt says, "Wait, the woodsman that we met before had a lantern that was burned by edelwood oil." But he wasn't the beast. He actually told us to avoid the beast and gave us directions. To which the people at the tavern say, "And yet now you're more lost than ever." Yeah, it's kind of weird. Although I would argue that they actually got themselves lost because Beatrice led them down a different path. So whatever. But all that's put on hold when they hear something outside. You see, while Wirt and Greg were celebrating with all the people in the tavern, Beatrice was waiting in a stable by said tavern and trying to chat it up with a horse. However, as she was getting more and more impatient and almost went back inside to get Wirt and Greg, she began hearing singing from the woods. Someone singing about how he chops the wood to light the lantern and all that stuff. It lets a merry tune, but it gets her curious about what's going on in the woods, so she flew out to go and check on it. And unfortunately, when she goes out there, she ends up screaming, which gets the attention of everyone in the tavern. As such, everyone in the tavern urges Wirt to go running out there and save his friend. And so he ends up running outside, ends up grabbing the horse from the stable, grabs Greg, and they run out, and sure enough, once they run out there, they find the woodsman standing in front of one of the edelwood trees, and Beatrice knocked out right there on its roots. As such, with this evidence, Wirt thinks, "Oh my God, you really are the beast," and so they end up getting into I don't want to say a fight, but a tussle. Essentially, Wirt ends up grabbing the guy's leg, and while Wirt distracts the woodsman, Greg goes in and grabs Beatrice and runs for it. In the meantime, the woodsman just pulls Greg off. The woodsman just pulls Wirt off his leg and tells him, "What are you doing? The beast is upon you right now." But Wirt ends up managing to get out of his grip by kicking his lantern and knocking it down, which causes a small fire. As such, they managed to get back. As such, they managed to get Wirt and Greg managed to get away on the horse with Beatrice. And upon Beatrice waking up, she does tell them that the reason why she screamed was because when she went out in the woods, she saw a strange shape. But when she flew away, she flew into a tree and got knocked out. As such, as the group is running away, Beatrice wants to ask if Wirt was able to ask for directions. He says he doesn't. But thankfully, he hasn't. He did find someone. He did actually get to talk to someone. What? How? The horse talks. I'm not kidding. As they're riding away, Wirt introduces Beatrice to the horse, whose name I genuinely don't remember. I'll probably remember it in the next episode. But yeah, the horse can talk, which is kind of funny because Beatrice tried having a conversation with it, but it reacted like a regular horse. So that's kind of funny. However, as the quartet rides off into the distance, we cut back to the woodsman having gotten the lantern under control, and we soon see someone behind him. We don't see who this person is, but we see a pair of glowing eyes in the shadows, saying, your lantern your lantern seems to be going out. Perhaps you should let me have it for a while." At which point the woodsman yells at this creature, revealing that this thing is in fact the beast. It turns out, yeah, this lantern was the beast's, but he wrestled it away from him. And if the beast tries to take it back, he'll do it again. As such, the beast just calmly asks, "Well, where did those children go?" And the woodsman pretty much tells him to shove it. The kids are not his concern, but the beast reminds him to be careful lest the flame and the lantern go out, and he loses the soul of his daughter. Yeah, it turns out that that's the reason why the woodsman carries the lantern, because it apparently holds the soul of his daughter. And as such, with this knowledge, the woodsman just curses the beast, and the beast just laughs at him and proceeds to continue singing. Yeah, it was the voice that was singing about chopping the wood to feed the lantern. So, yeah. That was the reveal of our villain for the miniseries. So, all right, first let's talk about Schooltown Follies. I would just classify this episode as filler. Like, okay, I guess the biggest plot development we get from it is mostly character interactions between Wirt, Greg, and Beatrice, and helps continue to build their dynamic for the series. In this case, we see Wirt and Beatrice just slowly warming up to each other, and Beatrice getting more comfortable with these kids. Because in the beginning of the episode, she's clearly just trying to hustle them along, trying to get them to Adelaide, and then wipe her metaphorical hands of this whole affair with the kids. But at the same time, as a result, because of her attitude, Wirt ends up rebelling, especially when she calls him a pushover. And so, as the episode goes along, we see more and more of just the stubbornness and them clashing. But until finally, by the end, Beatrice does realize, does take back what she said, and is won over by both kids. As in the beginning of the episode, she mentioned how the world is just a sucky place and you just gotta deal with it. And so what ultimately sparks this whole episode is Greg deciding, I'll just make the world a better place, and then running off to do his own thing, which in turn leads him to the schoolhouse, which in turn kicks off the plot for pretty much everybody just going off to do their own thing. Pretty much kicks off the whole plot and ultimately leads to them, saving the schoolhouse by getting the benefit concert rolling. So ultimately, it's a nice little thing that kind of helps build more character stuff between the trio, as we see them just little by little working off of each other and kind of getting more accustomed to each other. With Beatrice ultimately admitting that she was wrong to call Wirt a pushover, though she ultimately says that he's a stubborn jackass. I mean, not in those words, but still. And by the end, Greg himself does get some kind of win, as he does end up continuing to fight tooth and nail to show that there is positivity in the world. When he's not in the school, he's playing with the animals outside and just having fun. When he runs inside and sees how melancholy things are during dinner, he decides to spice things up by singing about potatoes and molasses and how combined they actually create something sweet and nice. When that gets disrupted by the teacher's father coming in and stealing the animals' instruments, he ends up running off. He ends up saying, "We got to go fight for that." And he takes Wirt and Beatrice out to try and find a solution to this. Finds the guy. They end up stealing the instruments back and give them back to the animals to hold a benefit concert, which does end up helping in the end. And and by the end, things end up working out for everybody. The school's got money, the teacher's got her lost love back, everything is just hunky-dory, and by the end, it's just a rather sweet episode. Nothing really advances with it, and there is some, and again, it does well in building character dynamics, but the main core of it is just the cutesy, fun stuff about it. Just seeing the whole oddity of seeing the schoolhouse with the animals, from the very first shot when you see all the animals in people clothes, it's weird. It's just really weird. And the way the teacher gets all melancholy and dramatic when she talks about her lost love and how the schoolhouse is going to go under because her father keeps threatening to pull money, it definitely just feels rather melancholy. Especially, it feels like you're thrown right into the middle of her dramatic story, which even Beatrice comments that this lady's got baggage, but but in a way, it's also kind of amusing. It's kind of like a parody of it, especially when things got you moving along and the boys managed to fix everything, only for her to still lament about her lost love, etc. Or even learning that that her father, while seeming mean at first, ultimately does want the school to succeed and has sold everything he owns just to keep it running. So it's nice. It's kind of sweet. A little bit rushed in some regards, but it's silly and goofy fun. It ultimately has a sweet message and sweet ending, so I'll give it credit. It's still a nice episode, and I still enjoy it. As for Songs of the Dark Lantern, this one does well in mixing the kind of cutesy aspect and the wonder, while also bringing back in the mysterious and surreal. Case in point, remember the stuff with the Edelwood trees. As I mentioned in the last episode, one of the first shots in the episode was of a tree looking like it was frozen in a scream. It's a creepy image that helps kind of set a mood for what you're going to be expecting later in the series, but it's in this episode that you learn why it looked like that. It wasn't a stylistic choice. That tree was most likely a person before, because as the people of the tavern sing about, if you lose your will, then you will be and the beast is set upon you, then you will also be turned into an Edelwood tree so that the oil from said tree can burn the beast's lantern. It's honestly really creepy, and it adds another layer of horror to this as it showcases just what will happen should these kids end up getting caught by the beast. And on top of that, we finally get a reveal of the beast. Because after all, we never really saw the beast in the last few episodes. Every mention of the beast prior to this episode has usually been a token mention, something about it that's just been worn, just a token, just something here and there. But in this episode, we finally get something heavier, something more solid about its presence. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. Xander wanted to go out, but like I said, we finally get to see the beast in this episode, and what we get in the introduction is rather creepy. The beast is once again talked up, and they state why it's a threat. But when we finally see the beast in this episode, it really does feel off, especially with how he's introduced. We just see these two glowing eyes in the shadows. We don't really see the beast's figure. We don't really get to see the person. And when we actually hear the beast talk, it's soft-spoken, rather nice, gentle, like a friend who just was concerned about you, who wants to help you. Even the way he talks to the woodsman about offering to take the lantern off his hands, or can you tell me where the children are? It really does feel like the niceties are laced with a hint of venom. Despite how polite his demeanor is, there's something darker beneath the surface, something more twisted. And with the way the woodsman reacts to him with anger and ferocity, saying, "You leave those children alone," and the beast's response is just to laugh and sing merrily about chopping the wood to light the lantern, it really does feel off. Like this is an unstable, like where you're dealing with a truly unstable and twisted mind here. And it does well in setting the mood for him as a bad guy. It ultimately is nothing really big so far. Again, most of the beast presence beyond this is still told to us via story, but it's nice to be able to put a face to the descriptors in a way. So it's kind of, and it does well in showcasing that this thing really is a threat, and it's best to be avoided at all costs. So I like that, and I kind of like how it continues the story. On top of that, once again, we still get some nice kind of whimsical nature with the tavern, as we see Wirt and Greg going in there and conversing with the tavern folk. And like I said, how it's pretty much described is just, it's just like a tavern in a fantasy setting. As each of the people that go there, they don't have names, they just have titles, and they celebrate those titles. They celebrate their lots in life and share them with them. When Wirt and Greg show up, the reason they're asking about who they are is not just because, well, what are you doing here? They genuinely want to know, hey, what you doing here? Let's talk about it. Let's sing about it. And when they finally learn what they're supposed to be, in this case, the pilgrims, they celebrate it. It's actually a rather nice, homey, and just kind of a friendly setting that does well. That kind of feels awkward, but at the same time, very welcoming and very. So it's kind of nice seeing that and seeing them sing about it. And the song choices are actually really nice and kind of cool to listen to. Nothing really that you can bob your head to, but it's nice that you can just kind of shake your head to the side, just like this. You can do this to it. It's just a nice little tune setting the mood about who they are, what they do, and even the song about the beast really does feel like creepy and ominous, and strange. I like that. So I do think it's really interesting. But it also furthers more character development, as once again we finally learn more about the woodsman, and learn that he was in fact connected to the beast, and the reason why he carries the lantern, like he said, that was his lot in life, was because he believes it contains the soul of his daughter, and the beast is pretty much holding that over his head, hence why he has to keeping the light of the lantern going, which means unfortunately he's also kind of caught in the beast's plight, as unless he doesn't keep the lantern lit, well, then he can't. Then the light of his daughter goes out, which means unfortunately he's got to let the beast keep doing his work, which does kind of suck. Although he does want to draw the line at kids, so I do kind of like that. It's very interesting to see. Otherwise, both episodes are still fine. Like I said, the Schooltown Follies is a nice little filler episode that does well in continuing growing character dynamics, while also just kind of being some lighthearted, goofy fun. And the next episode does well in once again mixing the whimsical and the mystic with the dark and surreal. The way it opens with the children being caught in a storm while riding in the back of a cart from a guy who's running away from the beast, to the singing the singing of the people in the tavern, to the strange woodsman coming back and revealing that he might be connected to the beast, to learning about the Edelwood trees and their origin, to finally learning about the beast itself. It's rather interesting and does well in continuing the story, as well as showcasing more of the children's journey. So overall, I like them both. Again, one sweet episode, one surreal but ultimately fun episode. So, yeah, overall, both are good times. So, that's about it then. I hope you enjoyed my vlog. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.